right, and welcome to another episode of the Core Advantage Athletic Development Show, proudly brought to you by Iron Edge. Very special guest today, Michelle Andrews, one of Core Advantage's favourite daughters. Started with us as an athlete, intern, coach, and now is running her own incredible business, Motus, which is a combined, it's an allied health, high performance melding. It's quite amazing. And she's someone with a lot of experience as an osteo, as a strength and conditioning coach, and as a high performance manager. So heaps to chat about. Michelle, welcome to the show again.
Thank you. That's an awesome intro. Thank you very much. It's a very big privilege. One of the Core Advantage daughters. Yeah, I like it.
All true. Now, since the last time, you're probably about 20 years older since we last talked on the podcast about 2 years ago.
Hey, I turned 30 this year, so age is a bit of a...
Is it a touchy subject?
Yeah, it is, just a touch. God, but yeah, you're probably right, to be honest. It's been a few years.
It's been a few years, and it's been a big period of change. So I'll tell you, one of my most exciting things ever was about 18 months ago or more, I suppose, the launch of your business. I'd watched it, be from conception to sort of birth. It was this baby of yours, and it was getting it all going. And you had this awesome launch party, and I came down, and I was so excited for it. It was just brilliant. And then the day after your launch, we went into the first lockdown.
Yes, it was a roller coaster of a day. It was a roller coaster of a time, obviously, but that's just kind of, I think that's now, I know, definitely even more so a standard of opening a business. But yeah, that was that day in particular was this kind of like, anxious build up, excitement. Will we do it? Won't we do it? We turned it from an official, like a grand opening to a soft opening. And it was awesome to have that kind of, that instant gratification of people actually showing up to that. We had yoga classes on at the time and food and all that sort of stuff. Actually, no, we didn't have food on purpose because of the
sharing.
Risk of sharing. We'd organised all of that stuff and had to cancel it. And then, our mates, Scott Morrison, ScoMo, ruined my joy. By 11 a.m, he basically said, actually, guys, I'll just hammer you back down to earth. We're going to close tomorrow.
And for people that don't know, the build-up to opening, like if you think you know what the build-up to opening a gym is like, no matter how empathetic you think you might be, it's a full-on thing. There's so many timelines for equipment and renovations, and it's always a huge thing. And yours was a pretty big setup in the sense that you had to build all your rooms, and you had to convert what was let's face it, a bit of an ugly building into a beautiful space. How long did it take you from the day you got the keys to having it ready to open?
A lot longer than what I wanted. That's the first lesson. I'm going to say 6 months. We were kind of active just before the soft opening, but in terms of like being full on ready to go, that was pretty much day one. That was in the middle of March, and it took almost 6 months to get it going. I wanted it to take 2. And especially in terms of the fit out and all of that sort of stuff, you think it's simple, in terms of it's timber and plaster. You can get it done pretty quickly.
You've got nail guns. How long can it take?
Yeah, exactly. But there's so much more to it. And as you said, that timeline is infuriating because you have this thing in your head of, okay, this is going to happen on this day, then this, then this, then that, and then that will flow into here, and then we'll be ready to go. Hold on, when do I get this to fit in? When do I get that to fit in? And no doubt about it, someone or something along that timeline just doesn't happen. Usually some sort of tradie turns around and goes, actually, I can't do it on that day. I have to come on Friday instead. And everybody else then goes, oh, well, then I can't do my job. and everything else gets pushed back. And the plumber that was coming on Thursday says, well, I can't come next Monday. I've already got something else. So that gets pushed back as well. It was that's a long timeline. That's for sure. It's a frustrating one.
And you're bleeding money too, because you're paying rent and you just want to get open, and you've got that vision. And it's full on.
Yeah.
Tell me about the vision. So I think you've got your vision for the business was great. I think it's worth articulating that to sort of contextualize everything else that we're going to chat about. Tell us about your vision.
The vision of Motus was something I've had for a really, really long time. Basically, it was a place that people felt comfortable and safe and encouraged and motivated to work on themselves from a performance perspective, from a health perspective, from a well-being perspective. And on top of that, being female and working within female sport was to change the dynamic and the conversation around women in sport and women's training, and really create a place that was dominant in pushing that and changing the view of it, the perception of it. Yeah. Which
you've done incredibly well. It's amazing.
Thank you.
But I want to dive into that more in a minute. But tell us, I want to talk about, so you were shut. What did you think? And I know the first few months of opening Core Advantage was so stressful, and it was like, are we going to make it, aren't we? But we were open, like we had that momentum. What did you do? Day two.
Freaked out a little bit, and then just thought, well, we've got to keep going. We've got to find a way to do something. At that point, allied health was actually allowed through the majority of the lockdown, but it had gone to essential or critical care, which was basically, vague and not so vague at the same time. But in terms of the gym, the performance side of things, strength and conditioning in general, and the yoga meditation that we had to complement that or work in with that was not allowed at all. It was difficult. So I turned to nourishing in a sense, nourishing the database that we didn't have, nourishing people on social media. That was the thing. We didn't have a database, like other places were offering yoga online and doing that with a membership fee. We had no one to do that, especially in that part of the business. Obviously, I'd been practicing for a few years. I'd been coaching for a number of years. We had that partnership with Melbourne Uni. So, one of those rules of business is actually have people that want to join straight away. And I had that foundation with them more so than what I expected, to be honest.
In relationship with Melbourne Uni in the footy space, where you've served as high performance manager, and Motus now provides all their off-field services in terms of all that stuff, correct?
Yeah. So I'd been working with Melbourne Uni Women's Footy Club for a number of years. I'd taken 1 year break, and there was, because of the landscape of AFLW, they were kind of partnering with North Melbourne and all that sort of stuff. And I was working at Collingwood at the time, and there was this whole switch of VFL being pushed back to North Melbourne and not Melbourne Uni. Since then, we came on board as the partner with Melbourne Uni Women's Footy Club. So we provide all their sports trainers and strength and conditioning, which has been pretty, just as volatile throughout this last year and a half. But we had that base. Whereas, from the other perspective, from making it a really booming sort of yoga studio, we had literally zero. It was just, so we turned to trying to grow that database, trying to grow that social media and that brand awareness, and giving people stuff that they could do at home, and just trying to be present and keep people engaged with what we were and what we could provide. That was the biggest thing. That was pretty much how I had to kind of put all my energy, and see as many people as possible, but within
the boundaries.
Within the boundaries. And it was pretty full on to kind of spread yourself so thin at that point. But many people would agree we just didn't have a choice at that point.
Knuckle down and do it.
Yeah, definitely.
So why did you have it seems that having yoga in a clinical health setting, in a gym, that setting is sometimes almost compulsory, but you haven't done everything just because it's what people do. I'm curious, why have you got yoga in there? What does it bring to the table?
Light and dark. So
okay.
That's probably more from an osteopathic perspective. I've had a lot of patients that sort of say, I pay X amount of dollars a month for my yoga membership, and then I pay this much for my Pilates membership, and then I pay this much for swimming, and so I can't afford to go to the gym as well. Fair enough. I wouldn't be able to afford it either. It's pretty crazy, and that was one reason that you could have both. The other part is, in my opinion, there's too many people that think I'm only going to do yoga. I'm just going to do yoga and meditation, and that's going to be my bread and butter because I enjoy it, and I'm going to get strong and lose weight and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
Which we won't even delve into that. I disagree with that. I think that you need both. On the other hand, though, and I'm definitely a culprit of this, I'm just going to do strength and conditioning. I'm just going to gym, and I'm just going to play whatever sport I want and run and, do those sort of high stress or high load activities. And I don't have that yoga, meditation, soft side of things. I think that's having both, or having the opportunity to do both, is really complementary and something that we're trying to teach our members. It's required, I suppose. It's, you can do 2 to 3 S&C sessions a week and then do 1 yoga a week. You can do 2 to 3 yoga sessions and then do 1 S&C a week. And you're going to be better for it, in multiple ways. So we're still struggling to teach everyone that, but that's an interesting
sell to make, isn't it? Because it's that thing where, like, those that do yoga, what they generally, the people is like, you're actually already pretty good at some of that stuff. What you need is a dose of strength. And those that do the strength really well, it's like, you just need a dose of yoga. It's just getting them to actually realize that they need a bit of what they don't gravitate towards as much, isn't it?
Yeah, that's exactly right. And luckily enough, the thing that really does the trick is the allied health side of things. So I think when people break down, that's when they realize that there's something else that they could be doing. So, we offer mat Pilates as well. And there's some people that love their mat Pilates. That's where they get their strength. That's great. Just do 1 yin class as well. Do 1 slower paced class. And when you have that opportunity to go, the reason that you've had this injury or this strain, or that you've got this, whatever it might be, is because your load has spiked and because you've gone from doing nothing to doing 4 Pilates sessions a week. Just tone it down, maybe swap a Pilates session for a yoga session, or, swap an S&C session for a yoga session, or just slide it in there if you can fit it in.
So as you're talking, it's occurred to me that what you are is you are often acting as each of your clients' high performance manager, aren't you? Rather than just selling them, oh, you need to do this. I'm the strength coach, you need to do strength. You're able to take that sort of overview and go, actually, you need to do this, you need to do that. And you've got a good position of authority because they will actually listen to you. They won't all do all their homework, but they will listen to you.
Yeah. And that's their step. That's one of the challenges I find. But yeah, you're exactly right. And I've never thought of it that way, but it's true. You're able to provide that education. You're able to provide the opportunity and the resources, which is, when we can probably delve into that later, that's one of the biggest things that I'm about. You're able to provide all of those, and then it's then in their hands. So will they do their homework? They're listening to you. Are they actually going to take it on board? That's up to them. And that can be frustrating for us, as you would know. But at the end of the day, you've done what you can do, and you have to be content with that.
One of the things I've always liked most about being a rehab-oriented strength and conditioning coach is that we can make our people do the homework, because it's like we've got them in the gym and it's you can actually enforce it. How does your structure? I'm really curious about how your structure works, because I imagine you're getting similar benefits of you've got a big building, you can make them do it. So what's a typical customer flow in terms of people coming into the building and how they start with you?
It really depends, and it depends on the person. And there is a massive difference between the athletic population and the the general population. Thank you. Yeah. There's a massive difference to their comfort, to their acceptance, and to them taking that on board. That's the first thing I'll highlight. Athletes are usually much more accepting that they have to do the work, because their goal is bigger and their goal is more specific to their health and well-being. It's more tangible, right? Your concentration at work is always going to be connected to your health and well-being, but general pop often see that as two completely different things. An athlete goes, I want to be able to get back on court. I want to be able to get back on field. I want to make the team. So this is directly, tangibly linked to what I'm about to go and do. So it is a little bit easier for that population to get them from a clinic room, for example, into an S&C situation. And
is that the way it normally goes? You're seeing people clinically and then they're going into the S&C, or is it half and half? How's the typical?
It's mostly in that sense. It's probably going down to a 60-40, and it does. So
60% see you as a clinician clinically, and then flow into the gym, and 40% come in for the gym and then may flow into clinical or may not. Yeah,
exactly. And I think in the future, it would be awesome if we were more 60-40 the other way, to be honest. But just with the scope of everything at the moment, it was so sort of up and down. We haven't had that really, really big push. So typically someone would come in with either, let's say they've got lower back pain. This is what's going on. This is why I want you to reduce these aggravating habits. But realistically, if you don't do X, Y, and Z, then this isn't really going to change for you. This is going to keep occurring. And you can kind of tell straight away. A lot of people will come in and say, look, I've actually got back pain, but I'm interested in your S&C classes because I know I need to do more. I know I feel better when I move. I know I feel better when I'm in the gym. So, I like the approach, and can we do both? That's like gold. That's a great day. But yes, generally the flow is, so I would assess, treat, and then prescribe treatment based on what I find. And then that varies depending on what it is, depending on what the, complaint is, essentially injury versus niggle, and what comes next. Is it, okay, you're now going to do, I'm going to treat you again in 4 days, and then we're going to see you again and go through your program, or we're going to get you into our group sessions. Or actually, I think you might need to see our EP, Hannah. You need a little bit more one-on-one, and she's really good at, X, Y, and Z, especially with these other things that you've got going on. I think she'd be really great for you. Or it might be, okay, let's go. We've seen you once. Now we know what's going on. I can help our S&C coaches prescribe your program from this with a few of my little add-ons and coaching tips. What day you're going to come in here, that will determine who's coaching, and then I'll basically pass that person on to one of those coaches, because obviously they get more access to them. Otherwise, I'll, if it's a day that I'm going to be with them, I'll take them through their program.
And so we run here, athlete comes in, we assess whether they're a good fit for our culture, and then we do a biomechanical performance analysis and set up a program. And then they move we'll allocate them to a coach, so similar flow. But you're getting a lot of that out of the way just through the treatment process. You're getting all that information on where they're at and what they need to do by the hands-on work, aren't you? Yeah,
definitely. That's also limiting in a way, though. That's what we're kind of finding lately. I've actually spoken in the last couple of weeks with our strength coaches on coming up with a more systematic assessment, because there is then no well, there's no system because I have my own as a practitioner, and I can gauge a lot in terms of what is going on with that person's body and their, as you said, whether they're emotionally a good fit, culturally a good fit for us.
Could be intellectually too.
It could be intellectually too.
We don't want dumb people in our gym.
We want the buy-in. You've got to want to. You've got to want to work on it. If you're coming complaining that you're not doing enough burpees, you're probably not fit for our gym. Pretty much. Oh my God. We don't do burpees, just FYI. But
nor do we. No. Yeah, it's good. I'm so glad you clarified that. So are they your most hated exercise?
Probably, to be honest. Yeah. I couldn't think of a worse.
I didn't know. As a young coach, I didn't know what a burpee was.
Really?
I was somehow ignorant. I always thought my most hated exercise was upright rows.
Got to grow those tails there, Dom. No, I hated burpees. I've done too many of them in my life, and I hated them. And then I had when I went to uni, I finally got a physiological reason to hate them, and change definitely reinforced that.
How would you articulate that reason apart from hating them?
They're just they're too unpredictable, I think, is the best, most simple way to describe it, because usually they're given to people that are just starting out in terms of, this is generalizing, but I need a quick fix. I haven't done gym for X amount of months. I want to get back into it. We need some high intensity training. I want to be able to really, hit the gym hard, etc. They're so unpredictable because you don't know that person's level of fitness. You don't know their shoulder strength. You have no idea what their trunk control looks like at all. And that differs person to person. So you get 10 people jumping down doing burpees. I would put my money that not many of them are doing them very well. And it's just too much force going through joints that aren't capable of taking on that load.
It's interesting too, because I always think like push-ups are a great exercise. Squats are a great exercise. Jumping is a great exercise. It's just that when you mash them all together, you're like, oh, look, it's 3 times as good. It's like, no, you've actually, it's like reverse synergy. You've made each thing worse by putting it together.
Well, okay. Well, if you can't do 3 sets of 10 push-ups on your toes, what makes you think that you're going to be able to jump down and land in a push-up position into the bottom of the push-up?
Nail it. Yeah.
What?
Anyway, I also think that before we move on, I reckon they're a bit of a con job too, because I don't think they make you that fit. I just think they make you feel like you're working really hard because you feel so shit.
Because you're absolutely gassed. And you're
like you feel gassed. You feel a bit dizzy because you're getting up and down all the time. Like I reckon their perceived level of exertion is really high, but their actual their stimulus that they're generating for is actually not that great.
To be honest, I couldn't. I wouldn't know. I don't care.
Well, I had an athlete playing back in the day, playing like Siebel level, so high, second tier, semi-pro level basketball. And for whatever reason, they had a coach that was just giving them like 1 million burpees all preseason. And she was like, we are so fit. We're going to crush it. I'm like, you're burpee fit. But you don't.
Can you get up and down the court though? I'm not sure.
No. And she was shocked and appalled first game. She was like, why aren't we fit? We're so good at burpees. I'm like, well, it's not.
It's not really the same. Yeah.
It's not the same. So anyway.
Wow.
So burpee hatred is probably a good segue. I want to ask you about how over the years your clinical practices informed your strength and conditioning practice and vice versa, because you started out as an athlete and then moved into being an S&C coach, and now you're the genuine triple threat. How is your osteo knowledge informed how you coach? And tell us about osteo, because I think we're still really ignorant about osteo. Like in England, for instance, osteo is quite dominant, right?
Yeah, it is. It definitely
is. In
is.
Australia, it's not so much.
No, there's that competition, I think, in the allied health community that it's less, bring us up with you and more kind of let's differentiate ourselves, which is a shame.
Because physio got in and they locked it down early, didn't they?
They did. It's in a vault. It is
physio
a few padlocks.
Is
is the dominant field for sure. Which, and I'm not taking anything away from physios. There's great physios that definitely know what they're doing. It's not to say they shouldn't be in sport at all.
And I should say I see both. So I saw my osteo last week, or week before. I'll see physio. Like it's whatever it tends to be, whatever. There's certain bits of my ailing body. I'm like, this needs osteo, and I think that will be more suitable for physio.
Yeah, and to be honest, I really think it's more about the practitioner than the profession. You'll find a practitioner, whether any form of allied health, and you'll connect with that person as a person, not just as a professional, and as a professional, as in what they do. And their style of treatment will just suit your body better than the next person. Osteo is really underrated, I think, to be honest. It's growing and there's more and more osteos graduating every year, which is amazing. There's still things that we need to improve on. One of them is that exercise prescription perspective. And I think that does limit us in terms of keeping up with physios, because they're, a lot of what they do is that acute, early stage rehab, and that is exercise prescription based, obviously.
And they're going hard after, like they're going harder and harder to get off the tools and do more exercise prescription as well. It's an interesting convergence.
Very interesting.
They're veering over towards us in S&C, just minus the expertise.
Yeah.
Like I always like it. Like imagine if I was like I'm going to start cracking backs. Let's go.
Yeah.
People like, where's your training? I've seen you do it.
I don't know. Yeah, I've watched YouTube. It's fine. I've watched all those videos on Instagram. It's
interesting, isn't it?
It is really interesting, and that's a big kind of topic over the last probably 18 months to 2 years that I've heard in the osteo world. Like there are osteos that are they go down that biomechanical model. I'm not sure if you've had experience with that. Gray's Institute in America has another course that essentially is a lot more specific to biomechanics, which does feed in with osteopathy and how we view the body. Essentially, there's principles in osteopathy that differ from physio or chiro. That's pretty much the easiest way to.
Can you give us? This is such a challenge. I'm throwing challenges at you here. But if an alien's just landed on Earth and you were like, okay, I'm going to explain to you how physios and osteos differ, how would you explain that to them? And they're looking at the human body, like this is an interesting thing. How would you tell them about it?
So an osteo looks at the body with those principles of the body is a unit. Sorry.
Yep.
That's pretty much the governing principle, that structure and function are reciprocally related. And essentially we look at it in a way that there's always a reason. So, and this is, take it with a grain of salt, it's generalizing. Often, let's say you sprained your ankle or you've hurt your knee and you go to the physio. Most of the time, not all of the time, they'll look at the knee and they'll go, all right, how do we get this pain away? How do we reduce your pain so that you can get back on court? Definitely has its place. An osteo will then go, okay, that's great. This is where your symptom is, being pain. Why are you getting that? Where is it coming from the knee? Is it just because you had this incident that you've sprained a ligament and that's all we need to worry about? Or is it because your foot and ankle biomechanics are poor, you've stiffened up, you've lost that range and more force has had to go through your knee that it was capable of taking? Is it coming from your hip? Is it coming from et cetera? It doesn't mean that it has to be, definitely not, but that's probably the simplest way to explain how an osteo looks at it.
And it's also how a good physio looks at it too. It's interesting.
Yeah.
Good physios, they end up coming to that same conclusion. They might not necessarily have been taught it as much, but they end up in the same place.
Yes, yeah, for sure. And I think that acute setting where a physio looks at your knee, that's probably why they're more dominant in the sporting field currently, because an osteo looks at it and reduces that, but their main focus is actually on the rest of the body, because they're trying to, well, what I try to do is reduce load and reduce unnecessary load through that joint, because you want to give it the best opportunity to heal on its own, which is one of the other principles, by the way. The body has its own innate mechanisms to heal.
Yep.
In a sporting set,
does that drive that? Sorry to dive in on that one, but and that drives what is often a gentler modality in terms of getting things moving, but allowing them to move enough that they can start to heal themselves, rather than the sort of more aggressive approach.
It's taking it most of the way and then letting the body do the rest. Definitely. But and I think in a sporting setting, you do need that specific acute care, probably not necessarily more so, but the balance needs to be different from what you would do with the general population in your clinic. And the osteos that work in sport are better at doing that, essentially. You have to be able to manage that person, because their pain has to be reduced for them to get back on the court in 3 days, or on the field in 3 days' time. It's, it's not enough for you to just reduce load so that in a week they're better. You also need to reduce them. Exactly. Yeah.
And how did that work at Collingwood? How because you're in a unit there with very high pressures. How did they tackle that interesting problem?
It's been over a year since I've been there now, but we had another osteo, Nick Brasher, and myself worked there. He wasn't full-time, but I basically came in for treatment blocks. He was there a little bit more often. And they have 3 physios, or they had 3 physios at the time. I do think that's
so. It's kind of like a 1-to-4 ratio. If the two of you were adding up to one person.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, and those physios were full time. So
25%. 25% of allied health clinicians are osteo. We also had remedial massage and myotherapy, but essentially the physios would assess, diagnose, and work in with us for treatment in terms of excuse me. They would assess and manage that person's injury. We would then be communicated with to treat, to effectively help them overcome that injury sooner. Okay.
That's sorry.
That's right. Get your water. That's all good.
Yeah, my Simba. It's my favourite. Can you see that?
Okay. Nice. Very cute.
So and same thing with massage and myotherapy. That was available for similar reasons, and it was more player directed, as in you, just like in practice, you would have certain players that respond to that and respond to you as a practitioner more so than others, and they would see you a lot more. Things relating to hips, SIJ, weight distribution and I suppose, spinal movement, they were typically the type of things that we would be working on. But also
that's where you guys shine. I think you shine with SIJ, and ribs. My experience is ribs are really tricky. They're more tricky than people understand, and rib issues can flow into a lot of other stuff as well. So, and ribs are often secondary to thoracic spine, and so what's going on in your thoracic spine, and that I suppose is the perfect example. If your thoracic spine is restricted and you've got an irritated rib, you're going to then be loading over the top of your pelvis differently. So your SIJ, one side or the other, is going to be loaded differently, and that has a flow-on effect. That's a very simple way to kind of put it, and there's definitely a lot of things going on. Can I give the Durham version of that? What I say to people is, if your thoracic spine is wrong, nothing else is going to be right.
That's good. I like it. So, but then you've got to think, is it the thoracic spine that came first, or is it something else?
Yeah. Is it a symptom or a driver?
Or does it matter? I don't know. It's always an ongoing thing. But so in a footy setting, that's kind of how that was managed. It was a really big team, and there's resources galore. So let's put it that way, because obviously then there's rehab.
Particularly at a big spender like Collingwood, where they're just trying to spend all the money.
Yeah. Well, not so much anymore, but yes, pretty much. There's, then rehab physios, S&C coaches, pilates teachers, etc. So there was a very big team, and communication was a must.
How often does a big team like that actually all get in the one room, if at all?
The whole team would never really be in the one room for a meeting, but it was almost like the people that were more so full-time, so the bigger players would have a meeting multiple times a week, definitely. And that would then flow down. Information would flow across to us. Yeah,
nice. So the key things, I sidetracked you again. The key things were the idea that the body is a unit, structure and function are inextricably entwined, and that more of a belief around the idea that you get the body 80% of the way, and then it does a fair bit of its healing once you get things aligned and working nicely. And that you guys, you're good at all the stuff, but in particular, SIJ, thoracic, ribs, and necks, I reckon.
There's a few things. And it depends. It's like, it depends on what your interests are as an osteo as well. I find myself treating a hell of a lot of ankles and feet lately, to be honest. But that just...
What about soft tissues? Do you get taught, because, the most prevalent thing is, say footy's hamstring strains. Do you get taught a lot in osteo school about soft tissue, or is it less so?
Not enough, in my opinion. Well, not when I was there. I think we probably skimmed over the assessment of it, but it's not really. I think that's probably a poor outcome of our profession, in the sense that not a lot of people with soft tissues present to an osteo. So the osteos then teaching don't necessarily spend a lot of time on teaching, because it's not what you're going to see in clinic a lot.
You're only as good as what you say.
Which is very unfortunate, because again, that then limits us, because people go, well, you don't really know much about it, so I'll go to a physio instead, because they do. But realistically, if you saw more of it, you'd know a hell of a lot more about it, right? So no, in answer to your question, at a university level, there is not enough education on soft tissues and how to assess and diagnose them. And that's probably why at an elite setting like Collingwood, the physios are the main people that assess and diagnose.
Yeah, because it's a vicious cycle. If you're not seeing it, you're not getting good at it. If you're not getting good at it,
yeah, exactly. I've had to learn that post uni, and there's different, and there's still, the osteos that work with me now, the sports trainers that we have that are osteo students that work with Melbourne Uni, we go over, okay, is there pain on stretch? Is there pain on contraction? What's their range of motion? And where is if it is a strain, where is the location? And does that actually mean they can't do certain things and can do other things, or are they just completely done? Because, just because you have a hamstring strain doesn't mean that you're completely incapable of doing anything.
Yeah.
But it's quite, there's a certain level of risk, I suppose, with being able to turn around and say, you have a hamstring strain, it's at this level, but you can still do X, Y, and Z. You can't do, whatever else. And some practitioners will just go, no, let's cut everything. I hate that. I don't think that that's a good way to approach anyone, because you're taking away something that they really enjoy. That then, has issues or puts more stress and strain on their emotional and mental health. And there's evidence to show that would change their healing capacity. Yes, it's short term, and there's still soft tissue and all that sort of stuff.
I'm such a strong believer in that. We heal so much better when we're feeling good and doing stuff. If someone gets an injury here, and then sometimes they'll be like, oh, I can't come in for a couple of, like, no, you're coming in because you're going to heal faster. Trust me, you'll feel better. You won't fall into that moderate level depression that so many athletes get when you wrench their sport away from them.
Exactly.
It's just that as well, which is super counterproductive.
You still have that routine, you still have that connection with other athletes, you sleep better. All of those things are contributing to how that tissue is healing. So I'm very, if there's something that they can be doing, then let them do it. So yeah, but on that note, I think that's probably one of those, again, going back to that acute phase, osteos aren't necessarily good enough at it at the moment.
Whereas because of your other exposures, like you're more aggressive at making sure you're maintaining that.
Yeah.
So as a high performance manager, what did you learn from that? Because that's an interesting role where you're under a lot of pressure to make sure no one tears a hammy. Like that's a really important thing. And it's a different skill set to just treating one person. You're having to really run a program. I think you're a natural fit for it, but I still reckon there would have been some interesting learning curves. What did you have wrong about it versus where did you end up landing with what makes a good HPM? Because these days everyone wants to be an HPM. Like, I think it's interesting.
I think the biggest thing I struggled with was letting go, to be honest, of being able to allow others to do their job. And that was in the beginning at Melbourne Uni. I didn't actually have anyone else to do their job. So, the passion and the care factor is at an all-time high because you're overseeing everything and then you're actually delivering a lot of it as well. You also then can't, it's, that battle of finding time to, similar to when you open a business, to be honest, it's finding time to help mentor and coach the students that are potentially working with you and the other coaches, and then therefore entrust them to do that role. But you've got to actually do the role in the beginning. So how do you find time to do both? And in a setting like Melbourne Uni, it was impossible because you're only there 2 nights a week and you don't have access to, you don't have access to many resources. You've literally got the Oval and that's it. Eventually, when we started having a closer partnership with North Melbourne, we had access to their theatre and change rooms and at some points the gym, although that was difficult to manage through. Only very specific times and only certain players in terms of, obviously the training and gym is at the same time, so you're only really taking the girls in there that can't train.
Right.
Yeah. So you don't have access outside of those hours. Therefore, if they want to do gym or strength and conditioning at all, you have no control over that. So it was letting go of that. We had an epic warm up that was really quite long because, and one of the strength coaches that was working with us at one point said to me, there's a lot of glute stuff in here. And I was like, yeah. And he goes, I think activation should be really done in the gym. And I said, I agree. However, we don't have access to that. And we need to control what we can control. Like, you can't, I don't know if these girls have ever been to a gym, and I can't tell them to. They don't have the money, they're paying a footy membership at this footy club. They might not have the money to go to the gym. They might not have those resources. And
even if they do, like 1 in 20 are going to do their glute activation properly if you're not standing over them.
Yeah, exactly. Like, and you can go and say, okay, I want you to do this program with squats and blah, blah, blah. Who's like, you don't know that they're doing it well. So, in that setting, it was really, okay, we have to control what we can control. And that is within these 2 hours. And going back to what I struggled with was, knowing that I could only control those things and letting go of the stuff that wasn't possible. Something that I have improved on that specifically this year, especially with the partnership. I utilize the people that we've got working with us. So Abby and Nathan, as our strength coaches, both work with Melbourne Uni at trainings and games. And I'd be absolutely lost without them. There's our sports trainers are osteo students. There's a head trainer in Tegan. She coordinates them and, feeds back information to me. I would be lost without them as well. I've spent less time at Melbourne Uni this year than I ever have. And I actually at halfway point through the season, I called the president and I said, I just want to touch base, and I want to know that you're okay with how I'm doing things and how this is being run, because I feel a little bit uneasy about the fact that I'm not as physically present as I used to be. I used to be at all the trainings and all the games. I'm not there very often. I go to one training a week. Sometimes I can't even do that. And in terms of games, because we juggle with, the Melbourne Tigers stuff, there's 3 games on in a weekend. I can't do all 3 games, obviously. So, and we've got the people. We've got the S&C.
You've often got 2 games going on with Tigers,
yeah. Men's and women's straight after, or women's and men's straight after one another.
So you guys doing Tigers NBL 1 men's and women's? Yeah.
So we provide the sports trainers for that, and they've been awesome. We've been able to, really work in with them and help out coaches in terms of managing a few of those players throughout the season, especially with all the shutdowns and going back into them and all that sort of stuff. The president from Melbourne Uni, she was basically, our partnership is with Motus, and your team is doing an amazing job. There's nothing more than, you don't have to actually physically be present for us to know that you're fulfilling the requirements of the partnership. Which really, felt amazing and helped me a lot, and just kind of reinforced this is kind of a me problem. Like, I need to let go of the perception or the optics of me being there. Yeah. I don't need to do that. As long as I'm available to answer questions and help my team out, that's more than enough. And we've done
success is people not having to pick up the phone and call you because it's actually going well.
Yeah, exactly. And it's less and less. I'm hearing from them less and less, to be honest. And we've done really, really well. We've got 2 minor premierships already. 3, sorry. 3 minor premierships, 2 teams straight into the grand final, and that's one great. That's hoping to play a final as soon as we open up again. Before we go into that, they've got their second chance.
That's great.
Yeah. So,
because your method, your approach is very much, it's a more sophisticated way, from an osteopathy, from a clinical point of view, but it's still that same idea of, well, let's make sure everyone's functioning really well. Let's manage their load well. We don't need to win in the gym every single week, but if we're consistent, we're going to go all right when it comes to injury. Yeah. It comes to availability, because if your players are available, they're going to go a lot better.
Definitely. And I've spoken to the coaches at Motus about this, the exact same thing, to be honest, that our number one priority in terms of a performance setting is increasing people's movement capacity. If you can help them as much as possible to move very, very well within what their body is able to do, they will do the rest. We're not going to make them, we're going to make them sprint faster because their technique improves and because they move better and they recruit the right muscles, or, the best muscles for their body better. It's not, we're not doing a speed session. We're not going out on field with them and doing repeat efforts with them. That's not our role within those 4 walls. Maybe there might be a place for that in the future if we wanted to do external work, but you've got those athletes for this many hours a week and they go back to their club or their sport, and that's where that work is done, because that's what happens at training. Yep. And with Melbourne Uni, to a certain extent, we have access to doing that with those girls. They do conditioning throughout the week, even during season. But not all of them come to see us in the gym. So some of them benefit from that work a lot more than the others, because they've done the movement work first at Motus, and then we do conditioning with them on field, and they see those flow-on effects. Yeah. And even the coach said you can really tell the difference between the girls that are there and the girls that aren't.
You love that, because your heart's always in your mouth when you've got a cohort and it's got a bunch of your athletes that are training consistently, and then some that aren't. And it's always that, it's always that fear of, are they going to do me proud? Are they going to be obvious that they're doing better? But it typically it goes that way. There's an interesting trend at the moment where the prevalence of the biopsychosocial model is actually making people kind of be like, it doesn't matter how you exercise, the body's bulletproof, just throw exercise at it and it'll be it'll be great. And we had Lockie Wilmot on last week, and I was asking him about it, and his answer is, yeah, it's just the which I agree 1,000% with. It's just the pendulum. Like that's what people are saying now. It'll swing back the other way. But I'm always interested in, it's something all of us as coaches and practitioners have to fight against now, this sense that it's kind of, she'll be right, mate. Just load and go. How do you talk about that to people? Are you another question? Are you seeing that as well? There's just this. It's like, oh, you guys are so fussy about technique. Like, it's an interesting shift.
I'm the most fussy person about technique. I haven't actually I haven't had, members or athletes come to me and say that. It's kind of an expectation. I say, we're not picking on you. We're coaching you. We're making sure that you're being coached all the time. We actually had a little discussion about this with the coaches just on Friday. I've definitely had patients where fear and negative language really disables them. Right? They really have this attachment to certain movements or occasions that will just, if this happens, I'll be in a world of pain, and I'll be, I won't be able to go to work again for 3 months. And honestly, that's quite sad. So for that patient, or for those patients, I completely get it. Learning to, or trying to re-educate them to know that, spinal flexion is actually okay, and you're not going to hurt your back. And there is definitely a place for it, 100%. There is still a gold standard. And there is a way to deadlift that is better than the other way.
Yeah.
So that's like, from a simple perspective of, you're going to be able to lift heavier weight better if you do it with better technique.
And it'll translate into your sport better.
Yeah. Literally, yeah. And, with one of the athletes that works with us, she's been rehabbing for a while now. I remember one day she was going we were doing her testing. She was deadlifting. She'd failed on one attempt. And I said to her, you're really over the top of the bar. You're almost, all of your center of gravity is really in your toes, and it's too hard for you to pull. You have no leverage. Just make sure that you're shifting back for me. And she did that, and she pulled the bar, right? That's a simple change to her deadlifting technique to bring it closer to the gold standard that enabled her to reach her goal of getting that PR, right? Tick that box. Awesome.
Us doing our job too.
That is exactly right. And she lifted it beautifully. If she had lifted it poorly, she wouldn't have gotten off, like she didn't. She literally didn't get it off the ground. So, there's a place for that model, of course. And obviously as a practitioner, I see that probably more than an S&C coach. Yeah, but there's still a gold standard. And there's also that, I think you're quite similar. If we're coaching in the gym, I don't want you doing poor reps. Like, why?
Yeah, why?
Why
would you kick a footy poorly? Why would you shoot a basketball poorly?
Yeah. You're here to improve yourself as an individual, as an athlete. It's our job to coach you. I'm not going to walk past while you lift the bar in an incorrect capacity that is going to limit you long term.
Yeah, and it's not to say we've got to be careful, because we could go on about this for days.
Yeah,
but it's not to say that you never. There has to be absolutely perfection at all times, because maybe that'll mean you never get enough stimulus, so you're getting the perfect movement but without any stimulus in. So there's a band of great form. Like, it's not always going to be absolutely the perfect zero lateral shift lift. Like, there's going to be. Sometimes people have a tiny little twist. That's not the end of the world, but it's just those gross, it's just where you're doing, literally using the wrong body parts for the wrong actions. And you're like, that's not going to do it.
Yeah. Yep. Completely agree.
Moving on, I want to ask you before we wrap up. I think when I look at your business, one of the things that I am most impressed? Like, it's all awesome, and people should check it out. They should follow you. They should check it out. They should follow Motus. I love the content you guys put up. What really jumps out at me is you've really built in a rapid period of time in very unhospitable circumstances a cracking culture there. Like, you look like you guys are having a really good time, and people are very bonded to Motus and they love it. That didn't happen by accident. I'd love you to tell me how you've thought about that and actioned those thoughts.
It's, I don't know if maybe it did happen by accident. No. It's one of the things that I'm most grateful for and most proud of, actually. It's essentially the main emphasis on what I wanted to do. It's my main priority. Mm-hmm. Sorry, I shouldn't say our main priority. As an individual, and why I opened Motus, it is my main priority. And I think that's one of the things that grows a culture. You actually have to put energy into it. It doesn't just happen. There's also a sense of humility with what we do. You can, in an S&C world, I find that we use our ego to portray how good we are as coaches, and as
because we're insecure.
Yeah, well, it's that.
It's not the main game.
Yeah, well, that's it. The S&C world is rising in Australia. It's not there yet. So a lot of it is, I'm an awesome coach. I've done this, and we've got an awesome facility, and you should come and train with us. It's exclusive. Have a think about that, right? I'm inviting you to my exclusive place. It's not like, that's not what we do, by the way. That's what we try to avoid.
It's such an interesting balance, because I want us to be exclusive, because I don't want people that are the wrong fit training here, because I don't want to spend my time. It's like that Melbourne strength culture talk about don't hang around with turkeys, soar with eagles rather than hang around with turkeys. So I want people that are going to work hard, that are going to be good team-oriented humans, that are going to be fun to work with. But I want this combination of exclusive within an inclusive environment. So it's kind of a contradiction to pull it off, isn't it? Because you don't just want anyone off the street. There are people that are your people. So,
yeah, for sure. But I think that they definitely, for us, they find their way. Imagine, this might be a little bit weird. Imagine you have a coloured in grey circle, right?
Okay.
And then you've got a black border around that circle to find the edges of it.
Yep.
People look at that and go, shit, they are awesome. Look at them. They've got this, they've got that. I want to be in their club. Those people are awesome. How do I get in there? Or I don't know if I want to approach that like that. Like, what if I'm not good enough for them? What if I'm not a good enough athlete for them? What if they don't want to invite me past that border into that grey circle? Right? So then they just don't approach. Some people do, but what are the type of people that do? They want to be a part of that exclusive VIP club. Okay, so then imagine that grey circle without the border. And what does that make you feel?
Yeah, right. You could just be part of that if you identify with it.
Exactly. You can just walk right in.
You're a genius. I love that.
I'm not a genius, but that is completely sums up what I try and create at Motus. And it's not easy. There's often, times where I go, well, we're losing this a bit. We need to, how come? We need to go back to that.
It's a balancing act, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, it is. But people can just walk right in. They can have their own opinions. They can leave them at home. They can talk about it. They don't need to. We literally have members that have made friends that now catch up for drinks outside of lockdown.
That's
away from the gym. right?
That's huge.
That actually makes me so happy.
That's your goal.
That is goal.
Yeah.
That is goal.
Yes.
You know, I had a member that said to me, "Oh, like I was there and this girl, like she plays footy, and she just came and said, 'Hey, you know, I'm so and so. Who are you? What do you do? What brings you here?'"
That's
like,
so good.
Those people are awesome.
Yeah.
And those are the people that, you know, you want around.
Yeah.
And they see the circle and they go, "I want to be a part of that. And I feel comfortable to be a part of that. I'm going to walk right into it." And that grows the circle, because they're the type of people that do approach a stranger and say, "Who are you? Why are you here? What are you all about?"
I love those people. They're the best.
Yeah. I love those people.
I like
too.
them in general,
So,
like not just even if I didn't own Core Advantage. I just like people that are just like, hi, like they're just open and I'll have a chat.
Yeah. Exactly.
That's great.
So I think that's where the S&C industry can be better in terms of, you don't need to be exclusive, in terms of you don't need to be amazing. You don't need to be VIP. I would rather us have good people and create a good culture than know everything about high performance sport and coaching, because those things are learnable. You can educate your staff, you can do CPD, you can, address different things.
I can't remember who it was from. I remember this stuck in my head. The quote was, I can teach you how to teach a squat, but I can't teach you how to not be a dickhead.
That's exactly right. Yeah. But if you're, I think the exclusive-ness of a centre attracts dickheads. Yeah. So, when you say at Core Advantage, I only want to train people that are going to buy in, that are going to do the work, the less, I think, VIP exclusive you are, those people will automatically come to you. Yeah. I
don't care how high. Like I care. It's not how high level athlete you are in achievement. It's just what are you about in terms of process. Like that's because they're people that it's just selfish. They're just fun to work with. And they're selfish. Selfishly, also they're much better for business because they get amazing results.
Yeah, definitely.
So, final question. And thank you for that. I love that. That wasn't weird at all. That was brilliant. The circle with the hard border. I love it. Favorite three, like, so let's just say, and this is going to be a horrible question to ask a person like you, but if you just had to go, okay, I'm just going to pick three exercises, and they could be running, deep core, mobility, strength. I'm giving you an aneurysm, right? So you just got to pick three, not three things within the category of strength, but just three things. What would you have a person that wants to perform well as a human and an athlete? If you want to have the biggest bang for buck, what would be your three that you would throw in there?
Breathing.
Okay.
And obviously we all breathe, but learning to breathe well.
So learning to breathe more with your diaphragm.
Yeah.
So you're less of a rib breather. Okay. I'm going to circle back to how. But, what else?
Out of everything. That's
it's a nasty question. I sprung it on you.
Oh, the first one that comes to mind is a rear foot elevated split squat. That's pretty specific.
That's a good answer. Yeah. Why do you like that so much?
Good question. It's unilateral.
Mm-hmm.
It also highlights deficiencies in multiple planes. You're teaching center of gravity, because often people will shift too far forward. Sorry. They'll often be wobbly. You can it also, something that I look at, this probably circles back to that question on how osteo differentiates me as a strength coach. How are you moving and how are you cheating, for want of a better word, and why are you cheating and how can we change that? Yeah, exactly. So if you're in a rear foot elevated split squat and your right foot's on the floor, your left foot's on the bench, how narrow is that stance? How narrow or wide is that stance? And then when you flip your legs, what's the difference? Same thing. What's the difference? Is there a difference? Why is there a difference? And I could go all day about that, but we won't.
That's a great answer.
So, and it can be loaded up very significantly. You can get a lot of hip and knee improvement. What's the word? Yeah, load / improvement. It's big bang for your buck.
I love it. Also, worth note, it's highly correlated with change of direction capacity. So, at my level 2 ASCA, David Watts was talking about that he did a bit of an analysis of that from Melbourne Football Club, and it's very much those that are really have a really good, strong RFSEES, rear foot elevated. They also are really good on change of direction, which is very correlated with agility. So you can't being good at changing direction does not equal agility. You have to also be good at reacting. But if you don't have that base of strength, it's going to be hard to have that agility. That's a great answer. Let's circle back to the breathing. So breathing's important. We need to breathe well. How are you going to look at someone's breathing, and what would be the drill you would give them to make their breathing better? I
usually give this in a critical setting, but it's still prescribed to those doing S&C. I suppose it's more of a foundation. Do you have the available capacity in that diaphragm? So if you're a high level athlete, you're working every day. So that's a lot of breathing and a lot of contractions for that diaphragm to do. It's going to get tired, just like every other muscle. It's almost like, foot health, intrinsic foot stuff, but for your diaphragm. That's the way that I would view it. It also changes your capacity to manage stress. So if you're, optimal performance-wise, if you're too worked up, over-aroused, it brings you back down. But it can also go the other way. So what I would usually teach is lying on your back, and it's really dependent on the person and what, how they breathe. Essentially, are they a chest breather? Do they shrug their shoulders, etc.? So they would be lying on their back, hands around their diaphragm or lower ribs, and basically with thumbs all the way around. So fingers at the front, thumbs around, making sure that they can feel all sides of that rib cage and getting them to inhale through their nose, breathe into that, and then exhale through their mouth. When you exhale, it's a letting go. It's not forceful.
So you're just releasing and just letting the body push the air out itself.
Yeah, because often those people that are really sort of wound up, they'll kind of and almost tense to exhale. Yeah. And I know that there's, full exhalation breathing is a thing and has its place. This is not necessarily for that. It's more that, kind of chill out, chill out breathing. If they can't grasp that, if you can see that they're still moving through their chest a hell of a lot, I'll go one hand on your chest, one hand on your belly, and I just want you to make sure that the hand on that belly is rising before the hand on your chest.
Nice.
It's not limiting them. You're not saying you can't breathe into your chest at all. We're just focusing on the belly goes first, the diaphragm goes first. Yeah.
I love that.
Exactly.
You're crushing this. This is great. Okay, so and you might do that for like 5 reps, like anything.
Usually I'd say 10. I would say 10 breaths when you go to sleep before bed. In bed before you go to sleep.
Yep. Okay. So we've got breathing, rear foot elevated split squat. You got one more to spend.
I'm stuck. There's kind of 2.
Oh, well, tell us the 2 then.
The other one would be a half kneeling single arm row for similar reasons as a rear foot elevated split squat. Another part of that is that anti-rotation. So your single arm row highlights that a lot more. And often what I see in a running assessment is that thoracic rotation, pelvis rotation, and whether it's exaggerated in one direction more than the other. Doing a single arm half kneeling row often allows you to train that anti-rotation really, really well.
Yep.
You do have to highlight it with them, because often as they pull, they'll just rotate into their preferred side.
Yep.
But once you show them, okay, I'm just going to hold your rib cage here, now pull, they're kind of like, oh shit, what the fuck? What's going on? But it just highlights a lot more, and there's a lot more emphasis.
Yep.
On that, I suppose. And the
can
last
you sub that
one
in for can you do that with a dumbbell bent over row as well? Is there a similar, or is it really, do you think it has to be the kneeling?
I think it's more applicable when you're upright.
Yeah, okay.
Maybe it's just because it's yeah, and maybe it's just easier for the coach to see as well.
Yeah.
And for them to feel, if you're putting someone in that position, it's, at the best of times, it's hard for our athletes, Gen Pop patients, to feel where their body is in space. So having them in that position is so out of the ordinary that they probably wouldn't get the feedback. They wouldn't
get the awareness.
There's too much stimulus in that position compared to an upright position, which is much more, standard for them.
And so to drill down that, and so how much, for your gold standard, do you want much rotation, or do you want them to lock in? Like what's your gold standard for that?
That depends. So if they have a really stiff thoracic spine and that's what we want to change, then we allow rotation. But it is getting rotation through the thoracics and then not through the pelvis and hips. How do you stabilize those hips? Don't just shift and translate that pelvis across to allow you to come around. So it depends on the person, especially, if someone's overusing their shoulder girdle because they're so stiff through their thoracics, it's well and truly for that reason.
Okay.
If it's the other way around, then I don't want any, or very, very minimal. Obviously, there's always going to be some.
Yeah.
But if they've got the available thoracic rotation and you're trying to, usually they would use it in running techniques to stabilize, to counteract something else. I'm trying to take that away so that whatever is causing that that compensation comes up again, and we can address that.
Yeah.
So in that situation, it would be, square and just moving through the shoulder girdle.
Yeah, nice. Okay, and your bonus fourth one, because you're a favourite daughter, you get to have a bonus one.
My bonus fourth one would be change of direction or agility, high speed work, or low rep sort of technique based work.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. It's still a, as you said, rear foot elevated split squat correlates really well to that. That's awesome, but it's still a movement skill. People have to be taught how to do it efficiently, and that people do that.
Don't cut good, do they?
No, but there is a natural way to do it. Some, what I don't know if you notice the same thing, but people will have a preference, and for example, I use different footwork, changing on right versus left. I have no idea why. So it doesn't necessarily mean that this way is the only way, but practice multiple ways so that you actually increase your movement ability and skill to be able to do both. Yeah, autonomously. Yeah,
I love it. Well, that is a great way to finish on. Some excellent technical advice. I'm going to practice the breathing tonight before I go to bed.
Awesome.
Thanks so much for sharing all your experiences and time. Where can people best follow you so they can be across
Instagram's
Motus?
Instagram is our biggest thing. Motus.
And the handle is Motus.life. Yep, great.
And I don't even know what my personal one is. Mish Andrews, I think.
Well, Mason will put in the show notes for those, and obviously a link to the actual practice as well. And strongly recommend you guys follow them. Very brilliant business, doing interesting things. So
awesome. Thank you very much.
Cool.
It's been a real privilege. I appreciate it.
Pleasure. All right. See you guys.
Okay, hope you enjoyed that episode. You'll find all the relevant show notes over at coreadvantage.com.au. Also on the website, you can find more information about our athletic development services, education, our short courses, and everything else we're up to. So that's coreadvantage.com.au. Cheers, guys. See ya.